Hello, everyone. I'm Catherine Anaya. Thank you so much for joining me for the Women's Eye podcast, where you will meet fascinating women who are leaving their mark, making a difference, and changing lives. This episode is brought to you by Casco Financial Group in Phoenix, Arizona. Catherine Scrivano is the president of Casco Financial Group, and she founded her business to help people create financial strength needed for achieving their dreams. My guest today is Nona Lee. She is the Executive Vice President and Chief Legal Officer of the Arizona Diamondbacks. And Nona, welcome to the Women's Eye podcast.
Thank you, Catherine. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you. It's great to have you. You are in your 21st season with the Arizona Diamondbacks organization. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes, it's a tremendous accomplishment among many. You are responsible for overseeing all legal matters for the D-backs. I am very anxious to talk to you about how you discovered your calling, combining your legal profession with your passion for sports. But I do want to take a moment to talk about what's going on in the world right now and recently. The response from the sports world to the horrific police killing of George Floyd has been unlike anything I personally can remember. Professional athletes, coaches from all sports using their platforms and their voices to speak out about racial injustice. Nelson Mandela said, "Sport has the power to change the world." What role, in your opinion, Nona, should sports play in the current conversation that we're having about race in America and social justice?
Well, sports has played a very active role in social justice for years. I think for well over a century, at many different times. And one of them you'll see here behind me, which was, the silent protest of Tommie Smith and John Carlos of racial discrimination at the 1968 Olympics. And, sports does have a tremendous capacity to change the world in a number of ways. And this is just one of them because, our athletes have a platform, especially these days, to really effectuate change and have impact by having their voices heard. And in these days, it's much different than it was in the days of Tommie Smith and John Carlos, and then before them, Muhammad Ali, and after them, others. And, this goes way back to Jackie Robinson, where they actually put their careers at risk and their livelihood. And to some extent, our athletes do that today. I mean, you could look at Colin Kaepernick, for example, very sad case, silent, peaceful protest. He recognized, as do our athletes today, that they have the ability to make a difference and to use their platform to effectuate social change. And, I stop short of saying anyone has that responsibility because they participate in sports, but they certainly have the opportunity. And I applaud everyone, including our organization, who's taken advantage of that opportunity, especially in this case, to say enough is enough.
Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about the organization and how it is dealing with the situation, because I understand the NBA has established a committee on racial injustice and reform to help affect change. Are there any discussions within the Arizona Diamondbacks organization or Major League Baseball as a whole to do something similar?
I can't speak to Major League Baseball. The Diamondbacks released a statement yesterday, expressing how we feel about this and that we stand with those who are engaged in peaceful protest against this sort of hate and violence against African Americans. And, our organization is certainly has diversity and inclusion top of mind at all times, and is working on doing its best and doing better all the time in that area. And again, I think from a sports organization perspective, we have an opportunity here again, and to put that out there, because we do have a large fan base, and we have the opportunity to influence things and perhaps change minds and touch hearts. And our organization is certainly doing our part to do that and to help do that. I know we'll do whatever we can to help.
Well, these conversations are happening amidst a pandemic of a different kind, the health crisis, which put a halt to most sporting events, including Major League Baseball. Where do things stand right now with us seeing games begin? Will they happen at all this summer? And how will that look when they do actually start playing again?
Yeah, I don't have any inside information I could share with you. I wouldn't if I did, but um, what I can tell you is what I see and what I hear, and I know there's a strong desire on both the side of the players and on the side of the owners and teams in the league to play, and we're certainly hoping that there's baseball this season. Not just because we love it. Obviously, there's economic impact, and you saw some of our organization last week, and many other organizations are certainly facing that. So we're hoping that the two sides are close to an agreement that works for both sides so that we can get back to baseball soon. My personal opinion on what that looks like is that it will probably be without fans because of the pandemic and the need to be safe and keep everyone involved safe. That may change over time, who knows? We're all sort of, it's been interesting, and all the many years I've worked, myself, none of us have had to work under this level of uncertainty. And so trying to plan things and decide how to approach things and do things differently in this environment is challenging.
It's been challenging and stressful, I think, for all of us on some level, certainly. I do want to talk about the fact that we met not too long ago because I had the pleasure of hearing you speak at an empowerment luncheon. It was just so wonderful to hear you talk about your development and your lifelong passion for sports, and the fact that your original plan was to become a sportscaster.
It was. I went to undergrad at Pepperdine, and I got my degree actually in broadcasting. I started as an art major, but because I loved art when I was a kid, but sports was my home and continues to be. And so, yeah, I went to college and changed directions and thought, I was playing college basketball. I had transitioned from swimming to full-time into basketball and was playing at Pepperdine, and, was really thinking about my future and how I could merge my passion for sports into a professional life. And to me at the time, being so actively engaged in sports, sportscasting seemed like it would be a tremendous amount of fun, and I really wanted to do it. I was, in LA, used to being around media a bit, and I thought it would be a lot easier than it turned out being. So it just wasn't meant to be for me, and that's okay.
Well, a lot of people don't realize how much actually goes into it, that's for sure, or into law. So how did you shift from, I want to be a broadcaster, to, I think I'll become a lawyer?
Yeah, I call that the long and winding road. There are actually a few years in between there, and I worked in the entertainment industry in LA for several years on the business side. I never did break into the entertainment side of it, and decided that just wasn't going to be fulfilling for me. I couldn't see doing it for long term, and tried to think about what captured my heart and my imagination. And I'd grown up working in law offices. My mother was a legal secretary, so I often got summer jobs there. And I was so intrigued by the law, but just really had and I hope this isn't offensive to anyone, but it includes me too. I had a strong dislike for lawyers at the time, at least the ones that I knew as people, and I didn't want to be that. And so, it took me a while to get there, but I realized that I wanted to do that work more than I wanted to avoid being with those people, because I didn't have to be that kind of lawyer I didn't like. And so that's where the transition occurred. And, it was probably about a third career change for me. And, I tested the waters by working as a paralegal for a sole practitioner in Beverly Hills, who actually was one of my instructors at paralegal school, and he hired me out of school, and I absolutely fell in love with what I was doing. I worked for him for 3 years, and he said, "You're doing everything but go to court. Just get out, go to law school. You need to be a lawyer." And he literally had me apply, put me in my car, bought me a computer, and sent me off to Oklahoma City to law school within a 3-week period of time. So, it was an interesting journey, and one I'll never regret.
You found a new passion.
I
And
did.
before working solely with the D-backs, because as I mentioned, you're in your 21st year, you did serve as Associate General Counsel and VP and Associate General Counsel for the Phoenix Suns, the D-backs, Phoenix Mercury, and Arizona Rattlers. Did you always know that you wanted to combine sports and law?
I did not, actually. When I came out of law school, that was, I'm aging myself, but it is what it is. That was back in the Law and Order days. So, my only thought was that I would be a litigator. And I came out of law school expecting to do that. I had no idea of the opportunities available to lawyers in sports. And that actually didn't become apparent to me or even occur to me until I was already working as a lawyer here in Phoenix. I was litigating, and the WNBA started. And the light bulb went on, and I was a woman obsessed, and all I could think about was how do I merge my practice with my passion, because I just knew, I felt somewhere very deep inside that's what I was supposed to do and where I was supposed to be.
Did you, at the time, see a lot of other women doing the same thing?
I didn't, but I did know the woman who was at the time the general counsel for the Suns. And she had been a corporate associate a year ahead of me when I came out of law school as a litigator to the firm in Phoenix. So I called her and said, hey, how do I do what you do? And she was very kind, spent about an hour and a half on the phone with me. And, at the end of the day, basically told me, you're not qualified because you need to be a transactional attorney, not a litigator, because that's mostly what we do in this role. So I was determined to do that and tried to transition into that type of role at the firm I was at the time. They said no, so I researched the other firms that represented the teams and got a job offer with one. And about a week after I accepted their offer, they asked me to come down and talk to them. They told me my friend who was a general counsel at the Suns was leaving and asked if I wanted the opportunity to interview. And having spoken with her and knowing that I was completely unqualified, I said, absolutely, this. And they set up the interviews, went through the process. I didn't get the job, but they created a number 2 position for me and offered me,
there are no such things as coincidences, right?
Exactly. It's, the stars aligned, and, I believe strongly that, it's going to sound strange to some people perhaps, but that if we put our energy out into the universe and pay attention to what it is that we're supposed to be doing and put our intention there, that we can get there.
Absolutely. We put out what we get back, for sure. I do want to ask you, because I did mention you, whether you noticed a lot of women in that position, because you have this long list of accomplishments, most recently having served 2 years as president of the Sports Lawyers Association. Only the second time a woman has led that national organization in the more than 40 years it has existed. That is phenomenal. So for young girls and women who look to you as a role model, who want to follow your career in sports, what is the best piece of advice you would offer as a woman in sports? Because I think some of what you were talking about just a moment ago was relationships matter, right?
Relationships do matter, and it's important that you form those, but almost more importantly is your yourself. You have to believe in yourself. You can't be afraid to go after what you want, and you can't let other people's doubts become yours. You have to trust yourself. You have to believe in yourself. And yes, relationships are important, and we shouldn't be myopic in those relationships, and we shouldn't be limited. What I mean by that is that they should be authentic. They should be really about being interested in and caring about other people and admiring what they do and wanting to build and maintain relationships with people, and not just about people helping you. Those lifetime relationships matter because, as you know, in this sports and entertainment business of ours, it is very much who you know. And so, it's important to build those relationships and build them early.
Talk to me a little bit about the challenges that you have faced, some of the obstacles on your road to success as an openly gay African-American woman. What did those look like?
Well, yeah, let's start.
I know that's a loaded question.
It is. And I really think about it in 3 parts because, I am and by my very nature, a three-part person, I guess, you know, first a woman, an African American, and a gay person. And I have had challenges along my journey in each of those areas, because this is just life, and the world is changing, but you know, change takes time. And you know, back when I started practicing law, even though that was in the mid 90s, there were still, you know, let's say the perception that women, you know, couldn't be lawyers. And I got a lot of the when I'd be at depositions and lawyer from the other side would come in, they'd say, "Oh, dear, please go get me some coffee." So just that traditional sort of thing from being a woman. You know, I've also experienced people's discomfort with me being, you know, initially just being African American, especially here in Arizona, because the population of African Americans in our state is not huge. And it's taken some getting used to, not just as a lawyer, but as a person. I remember when I first moved here, and even in 1995, I went to a restaurant and couldn't get served. So, you know, that has been a challenge just in life here, and, you know, still exists, but, you know, I'd like to think things are better. And then certainly as a gay person, it's been challenging, especially a gay person in sports and men's professional sports. And I was very self-limiting initially, because I was afraid, you know, of what the ramifications might be from that industry, and not understanding. And, you know, there's more to be afraid of not being yourself than there is to being yourself. So those things were challenges, but, you know, the solution for me was showing up and being who I am, and not letting any part of who I am be an obstacle to achievement, and just showing up and doing my best every single day. And sometimes, you know, as is true for women and people of color, having to work a little bit harder than
Absolutely.
make it happen. Yeah.
I often think it makes us appreciate what we have that much more too, knowing how hard we had to work for it. Is that some of what you teach the young women in the nonprofit that you started here in Arizona, the Phoenix Women's Sports Association? You know, critical skills in life you can learn through sports, but also, do you share some of the obstacles and challenges that you have overcome and dealt with those girls?
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things at the Phoenix Women's Sports Association, or we call it PWSA for short, you know, we've had a number of programs, but one of the programs that has been in place for quite a long time is the opportunity for young women, young girls, to hear from women who have, you know, who have been athletes and who have succeeded, not just as professional athletes, but who have succeeded in other areas because of their participation in sports, and to hear about how that can empower you and help you succeed in many different ways, in terms of learning how to build relationships through participation in team sports, learning how to be a part of a team, and how that translates into learning how to work with the team in your professional life. I mean, there are so many different nuances. And yes, I mean, that was the point for me of founding that organization. And I just realized today, it'll be 20 years next August. It was to empower, you know, help girls find their power through sports is the mission of the organization. And for me, it wasn't just about the girls. It was about getting women involved in that effort and teaching them leadership by board service and that concept, and about giving back. And, you know, one of the decisions I had to make that was difficult was to step away from leadership of PWSA, you know, after 12 years of running it day to day, because I wanted other people to have the opportunity to lead that organization. And I felt it needed different leadership to thrive, because I didn't ever want it to be about me. I wanted it to be about the mission. And, you know, I'm happy that wonderful women have stepped up and taken it on, and they're doing tremendous work. And as a result, we have impacted the lives of hundreds of girls in Arizona. And we've done that not only through providing them with opportunities to hear from other women. You know, we've done different events. Back in my day, I had a signature event called the Sports Explosion, where we gave girls and their families an opportunity to meet with elite athletes, try different sports, learn from the pros to find their niche, find what works for them, because there's an athlete in all of us. We just have to find what works. You know, we do the speaker series, and now they do other events to accomplish that, collaborating with other organizations. So, yeah, I'm proud of that. I'm proud that I was able to contribute that to the world, and, you know, to the state of Arizona in particular. Not my idea. You know, I was involved with Billie Jean King and the Women's Sports Foundation, and wanted to do something more local here to give back to the girls in our community, and that inspired me to do it. But we have wonderful women still running it and trying to make a difference here in Arizona.
Well, you certainly have, with almost 20 years now. Would you say that it's probably one of the biggest highlights of your life? Because you are certainly very accomplished, but would you say that this is probably one of the biggest?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely one of the biggest. I mean, I've been very fortunate in my life, and, you know, graduating from law school was a big deal. Passing the bar was a big deal, but none of that meant anything to me until I did this, because there was a reason all of this has happened for me. And it wasn't for me to sit back on my laurels and say, oh, look what I've done. It was for me about saying, what can I do? You know, what do these opportunities give me the ability to do in this world that I couldn't otherwise do? Because that's the reason that I have them. And that's why I founded PWSA. And so, yeah, that's a highlight for me.
Which brings me to your favorite quote: always give back more than you take. Can you please share with us why that resonates so much with you?
Well, it does, because, you know, I mentioned Billie Jean King a moment ago, and I got involved in service on her nonprofit board, the Women's Sports Foundation in New York, and it was life-changing for me. And, you know, if people like Billie Jean King and other people who can give back so much, you know, and can give so much of themselves, you know, I think for me, it was important to be able to do the same. And that quote was particularly important for me because it came from Billie Jean. After several years, she sent me a note one day and just said, thank you for giving back more than you take. And, you know, that certainly wasn't intentional for me. Necessarily, I wasn't doing it to get notes or get recognition, but I think that's so important, you know, and it's just kind of how I live. I don't want to be in this world or at the end of the day say, you know, that I didn't leave anything behind that made a difference. And so it's tremendously important to me, and it's the focus of the way I live my life. I don't ever want to just take, you know, I always want to give back more. So it's really, truly important. Love it.
Well, this community appreciates you. Thank you so much. Nona, thank you for sharing your story with us, for being such an empowering role model for young girls and women in sports. It's just been a pleasure talking with you and hearing your insight and having you on the Women's Eye podcast.
Thank you, Catherine. It's been my pleasure.
You can learn more about Nona Lee by going to our website, thewomenseye.com. Also, The Women's Eye has a book. It's called 20 Women Changemakers. You can shop for it wherever you buy books and at changemakersbook.com. That's going to do it for this episode of the Women's Eye podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Catherine Anaya. Until next time, remember, it's the world as we see it.